Hello there, and welcome back to Board Game Co. I'm Professor Meg.
I'm Alex.
Why don't I get to go second?
No, you're right.
She gets to go.
No,
Why can't I go
no.
second?
Start again. Do it again.
Do it again?
Okay. Yeah. We'll continue. This whole thing's live.
Yeah, it's going to all be in
It's
there,
not
but I would
live.
like to go second.
Absolutely.
It's not live.
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome back to Board Game Co. This is going to be a first impressions of Monster Hunter Iceborne at Steamforge headquarters. And today I have with me...
Oh, we are doing interesting. I'm Devon.
I'm Alex. Go ahead.
And I'm Professor Meg.
And today we are reading Monster Hunter World Iceborne. I'm going to give a short overview of the actual game, how it plays out. This is the follow-up standalone version of Monster Hunter World. It's completely standalone. It's going to have the new elements from the Iceborne, a few rules changes and adjustments. We're going to do a high-level overview of what the game is, followed by 3 different kind of stances of what our opinions are and how they come from. We're going to have Devon, who has played neither the video game nor the original Monster Hunter World. We have Meg, who's played the video game, but not Monster Hunter World, and not the board game. And then I've played the original board game. But starting off with the high-level overview, this is a monster fighting adventure. You're going to have your hunters, you're going to be taking down different monsters, and you're going through either a single shot episodes that you can play through against the monster, or alternatively the recommended full campaign game, where you're going on a sequence of journeys, where you're going to be tracking the monster, going through in a bit of an episodic choose-your-own adventure as you slowly hunt down the monster and track it, which eventually culminates in the showdown on the board, and then from there you're going to go through the follow-up, crafting various gear, improving your hunters, as you continue going through the adventure until you eventually take down the hardest mode of the epic main boss monster in the game. That's the high level view. Past that, it's going to come down to a lot of hand management as you play cards with your unique hunter, with their decks, you craft various gear, you change up their decks, their damage, their abilities, their armor, their gear, slowly trying to be mindful of the monsters and the way they're going to attack you in the game, slowly playing their cards and determining the initiative and round structure as you try to figure out how to tactically evade, handle it, and take it down throughout the course of the adventure. And with that, Devon, starting off with you, what's your overall impressions?
So I think you have a lot more experience than me in the monster hunting genre in terms of like boss battlers, but I did have a really good time. For context, we have played a scenario or an encounter that is kind of like in media res. There is the gathering phase, which for people that are familiar with Monster Hunter World, that's the the prep process for when you're going on a hunt. You have your scout flies, you have the kind of like arsenal that you're preparing to use for your monsters, and you have the narrative that exists of tracking down this beast to its lair or to its hunting grounds and then going after it. So we didn't do the gathering phase, we just jumped in and had our fight. And we also experienced something that I believe is not in the core game that was introduced in Iceborne, which is the fray.
And for clarity, the core game meaning the original. This is standalone.
Was it called the fray? Am I wrong?
I'm not confident. What are you referring to?
Where the other monster comes in?
It's called, oh my gosh, it's something else. It's not the fray, it is
just froze and couldn't
No, it's
think
all
of
good.
the name.
We're just going to move forward, but there's a term for it.
Turf War.
That's the one.
I thought of it. Eventually, I thought of it. It's Turf War. So we experienced it where we were actually going after the Barioth, and then Rajang came in at the very end and was a irritated, irritable big monster that also could have been attacking us, or actually, coincidentally helped us out with Barioth. And I think that was a very interesting thing to see, where it's like a boss battler and you could actually have the intrusion of an entirely, unknown element, depending on how the time deck plays out. Mm-hmm. So what I would be most intrigued in is to see how the gathering phase kind of informs the experience of this. But what I liked is it's got a really interesting decision space between the stamina board and the management of that, as you're constantly trying to clear what you've previously done to prepare for what you want to do next. And then also I like the decisions that you have as a team depending on what is coming up. So you don't know exactly what the monster is going to be doing, but you have a knowledge of how it's going to be attacking.
Who he's targeting.
In terms of what element of the monster is going to be the main focus point of their attack, whether it's their head or tail or their wings or something like that, or on the flanks, and then whether it's going to be the closest or the furthest hunter. So it does inform how you decide to calculate which person should be attacking, which one needs to prep for evading, and I like the kind of push and pull of trying to figure out the best way to manage your own stamina system and then also prepare for the inevitable of what the monster is going to do. And we experienced quite a few things that I liked how they played together. We had the regular monster deck that turned into the enraged deck, and I like that scaling. I think a lot of good monster hunting or boss battling games have a scaling threat level. Like the further you get into the fight, if you decide that you're able to handle the kind of pace or the challenge, then it scales up and presents an even new tier that you have to account for.
And that's something that's new specifically to Iceborne.
Which I totally knew that. Totally knew that. So I really enjoy this. I think that the movement and attacking of damage dealing that you do, I like all of the different things that you have to consider with the cards that you play, both the range that they do, the movement that they could introduce, the damage, and possibly where it ends its turn, and then also if it can break different sections. There's a lot of pieces that I've seen in different boss battlers that I think are kind of in a fusion state here. So I like the compilation of mechanics, and I had a good time, and I'm more intrigued now to see what the full picture is once you bring in the gathering phase and join it with this hunting phase that we experienced.
Cool. Meg? To you.
What am I saying? Just anything?
Anything you want. This is your show.
I forgot the pitch from the beginning when Devon started.
The pitch is that you've played you can just carry off of whatever Devon said as long as incorporating as well the experience of playing the video game.
Yeah, so I think that one of my favorite things to do with games that were a video game and becomes a board game is see how they incorporate different elements. And I love different iterations of a stamina board or how that's done. And I think that in this one it's done so well that it just makes sense and is so clear that if you're evading or dodging, you're spending your time that would be your action to actually jump away. So if you think about like the time when you're playing a game, how long it would take you to move away and then move back and then attack, the way the stamina board is set up, I really enjoyed it. That I think it's something that translates to board games really well. And the other thing is that in Monster Hunter, like we're fighting these beautiful but deadly creatures. So all of these miniatures are absolutely done so well that for us to be these hunters dancing around the board, you know, in the video game you're more freely moving around, it's open world, you can kind of just go around the monsters, where in this I feel like the orientations and the way they have us change the monsters, the way they're facing and moving, and even how clear they make it with the iconography of where you can move, I just think it really did replicate all of us all of us dancing around this monster, pinging it, hitting it, moving away. That I think that it really gave us a great cooperative feel. I think sometimes in co-op games, especially boss battlers, you can feel like you're the one kind of just doing your thing and staying in your lane. And I think that this really had us work as a team. Like we were making decisions together, talking about it, working through it together. That I loved that part. And yeah, I just love how they set up all of the iconography, even the monster cards, where it's very, very clear exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, cool. For myself, if you want my full opinion on the original Monster Hunter World, you can check that out. I've done a full review on that. I'll touch upon some high notes here, but I'm mainly focusing on the differences of what Iceborne brings to the table. Like both of them said, a lot of the general elements of teamwork, of cooperation, of working, like both pros and cons. I find that sometimes the decisions you're making of what cards to play on your hand, sometimes is an actual push and pull of what decision to make. Other times your hand play is fairly obvious, but even when that's the play, you still have a lot of combination and teamwork as you discuss what's happening next with the monster, and what's the right sequence of who to activate, how to activate. In your case, you even had like these decisions of like when to stay off the board to avoid things. I had a recent playthrough yesterday where I sat there and just like threw down a bunch of guard cards so I can sit there and just take a bunch of damage for a few rounds. There's a lot of working with your teammates as you figure out how to do things. The stamina board element's interesting because having not played the video game, I didn't really think of it that way. I just thought of the stamina board as something that kind of clogs you, gets you in the way. But thematically, you're right, it does fit into the video game. I never really approached it from that angle of the dancing around dodging. You can either take the damage and then hit back, or you can move away, but then next turn you're a little slower because you spent your turn doing that. Yeah, so that all makes sense there. For me, the main things I'm going to focus on the differences that Iceborne brought to the table, which for me are almost all exclusively either neutral or positive. I haven't seen a change that I didn't like yet. And those are going to be, some of them are going to be small maintenance changes, like the way the end of turn structure works, or when you die, and the way you work with health potions, stamina potions, the whetstone, the clearing, not this,
Not this?
Not that.
Not this
Is
bad.
it
Sure.
Oh, well, technically this. Actually, that's technically why that you handed me this. This is actually going to be your end of turn steps are going to be listed on your individual player card, as opposed to in the past they used to be printed on the time cards you draw. So that's a small, just quality of life improvement, small things like that. But to me, the main things that I really appreciate about what Iceborne does is, first of all, like Devon already mentioned, I like having the adjustment of a second phase of damage. No, I'm good. Not that. Not that.
Not
Yeah,
that. Okay.
Not that. Having a second, having a second phase of damage where you the monster is powering up and it has a degree of escalation. In general, I've liked escalation in games before, where you have that sense of you're getting stronger, you're getting more powerful. Although in this case, I don't know if you're necessarily getting stronger, but you're hitting that final tempo and you're working together to take down the monster. But now it's a bit stronger, so I like that in general.
So I did feel that some of the cards, with how they build up, you are getting stronger the more you can lead
There
up
are
to certain
some fun
things.
things. Like you didn't
Like
get a
a
chance to play
combo.
one of yours. Yeah, you do
Yeah.
have those opportunities. I love the turf war element. Like, love the turf war.
Hold the phone.
Go ahead.
Hold the phone.
Yep.
Are you telling me
Yep.
that Perkins did not indicate that I could have taken a stamina potion on my turn
Yep.
Yeah.
and removed my full board
Yep.
Yep.
You could have.
and used that freaking card that I held on to this?
Yep.
Perkins!
Yeah. Sounds good. I love the fact that the turf war element in the game is something that and it's always tricky to say this because there is the whole entire original Monster Hunter World line, and I don't want to in any way take away from the enjoyment that can and will give you, but I don't want to play without turf war. So that's a pro and a con. It's a pro for Iceborne, but it's like, it is a factor. Like, I don't want to play without the turf war. The idea that as you're playing through the game, there's always the chance, or it depends, I shouldn't say always, because it depends on that tracking phase and how it incorporates, but the idea that as I play a battle and encounter, there's a chance that a monster will be wandering in and totally affecting the landscape. It just adds so much tension to even the turns where the monster's not present, but then once the monster's on the board, it adds to that puzzle. Because suddenly you have two monsters, and they could both be attacking all the hunters, making your job significantly harder. But if you're looking into and paying attention like that, you're seeing those signs, those upkeep of what's going to happen, how it's going to play out, you can try to structure it so you have the monsters attacking each other and getting each other's way. But you can't, there's no perfect control, there's just the best you can possibly do as four small people with some degree of management, but not a ton, as you try to figure out how these monsters are going to incorporate and deal with the landscape around them, and the landscape includes you. I absolutely love that. I think it adds to the chaos of the board and adds a level of unpredictability, but it adds such a huge level of thematic storytelling and just such cinematic moments, whatever the cinematic moments are, whether they're you dealing with two monsters trying to attack you, or whether you have one monster crushing the other one to its death as you then have to take it out, or whether it's taking down your original target. I think it just adds so much to the experience.
I think that I really like the spatial change that creates with the turf war, because like, you know, the dancing and that process of figuring out how I want to attack or evade, when you have the one monster on the board, like, it's one vector that you're trying to like navigate around. But then as soon as you bring in that second monster, instead of trying to like kind of ebb and flow in a little bit of like distance or proximity to one monster, then you're and because the monsters are moving, it's not like from one point, you're actually trying to like move between a lot of different like tension points or kind of like focal points on the board, because you're trying to move through two different monsters, or you're trying to move away from two of them. And so I think it really creates a whole nother layer of thought process for how you want to navigate the space on the board.
Speaking of navigating the space, one thing that's been added that's been talked about is the Clutch Claw, where every hunter is going to have a Clutch Claw added to their deck. Now, across the playthroughs, we've done multiple playthroughs of Monster Hunter World Iceborne so far. I happen to have not seen this be that impactful yet. Reading through the card, though, it can be a big deal, as you have that monster stuck in the hunter stuck in the corner, using it to close the gap and like just smash the monster in the side, lowering its armor and starting to deal damage to it. I can see the potential impactfulness. Hasn't been that impactful yet. I like the card, but hasn't made or break the playthroughs the same way that Turf War has, or things like that. The last thing I want to focus on very heavily.
Can I say something about the Turf War?
Absolutely, jump in.
So
Jump in. You see what I did there? Turf War. Yeah.
Hey,
I see.
just use it. Get in the discussion with the Clutch Claw.
That's cute.
Also with the Turf War, as someone, like the playability, the mechanics, everything you guys said, amazing. But as someone who loves miniatures, you're able to play with 2 miniatures on the board instead of 1. So you're also seeing more of these monsters more often, that they're just so cool and beautiful that you're playing with more of your things and more of your minis in the game.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's you have these monsters you're hunting down. Honestly, the way the Monster Hunter World structure series is already incorporated, because you're going through multiple iterations of the monster, it's not one and done. Some games like this, you fight that mini, and then you don't fight with it again until you pull the game out 2 years later. In this, you're going to be facing the same miniature as it slowly powers up and gets stronger. But as you said, now you're even seeing even more of that as you go through it.
I just have this image of Meg with like, she's like slotted like 5 invasion cards into the time deck, and she's like, but now another one comes out, and another one comes out.
Well, I was like, I want the mod where I'm the monster, making like decisions and
She wants the
wrecking you
one
guys.
versus many
She wants the
expansion.
one versus many.
She's like, I'm the many.
I have an idea.
But yeah, so and speaking of just slotting in extra monster cards, like if you have the original Monster Hunter World, I'm sure there's ways to homebrew or adjust. I don't know what Steam Force plans are for the for content and all that, but like
And if you like a particular figure, you can still use these stats and use whatever figure you want if you miss your old ones or if they're already painted.
The last thing I do want to focus on is for me a huge quality of life improvement in Iceborne. That again, if you have the original Monster Hunter World, should be easy to backwards compatible, because it would be just be rules changes. This is not a Steam Force official anything suggestion. This is just me saying it. I would play the original, I am going to be playing the original Monster Hunter World this way. Is the way you now discard at the end of your turn, you can discard 1 face up card or 2 face down cards on your board.
What did it used to be?
It used to be just 1 card, period.
Oh.
And that adds so much reason and elements as far as why, like when I played the original Monster Hunter World, dodging just felt like such a waste of your turn, because it's take all these cards face down, or even moving, extra movement. You're playing cards face down.
You typically just don't like exercise those, so
That's
I can
true.
understand
That's
why
true.
the dodging is just
that's
like
unrelated, but
out the
also
window.
true. But
And
yeah,
I feel
so
the 2 versus 1 gives you more like agency and planning
it does.
then,
It gives you-
because
100%.
like I purposely left my 2 face down cards because I wanted to hit the 5th slot.
But so that element is always in play to a degree, but it just gives you more control over your standard board, more decision, more agency, and it gives me a lot more reason to actually sit there and dodge, because like, okay, fine, I'll play the cards face down, but they clear twice as fast. So I feel like there's more decision space around the things you do with your stamina board.
Well, and you were talking about the Clutch Claw, but the decks also have the feint card in them. And when you're doing the face up or face down, if you're particularly, like, the feint card, mathematically in the previous version might have just been like, oh, just get rid of 2 cards because it gets rid of 2 cards. But in that one, if you focus on the face up cards, then the face down cards you can clear more efficiently at the end. So
it just gives you a lot more agency and control of your board, which I really appreciated. I always found the original stamina board to be a little bit in your way. I understood the reason for it, the intent and all that, but it felt a little bit in your way as you played through it. Now it's still there, but it feels much more like a fun resource management game as opposed to a maintenance engine there. So that was a huge plus for me as far as going through it. And there are other changes. Those are the main ones that have kind of obviously more content, more hunters, or same hunters but different, more monsters, lots of more content in general. But those are the main changes that I've noticed having played through it. And just, again, for me, they're all either neutral or just straight up positive. But that's overall our impressions of Monster Hunter World, or Iceborne. Anything else?
So I want to tell a little bit of a story about what happened during our game.
Go ahead.
Is that fine?
Oh, by the way, make sure to go ahead over to the Steam Forge Games channel. You can see the official Monster Hunter World playthrough. Yeah.
It might start off a little controversial.
No.
So yesterday we also played.
Yes.
And when we played that, I played the same one twice. I played the Great Sword Hunter. And the first time I felt powerful from the beginning. And I always play melee characters that are very strong. I had a great time.
Are we giving a spoiler warning? Spoilers to the playthrough.
Spoilers. That took me a minute. I was like, what spoilers? We're allowed to talk about this. So spoilers for our filmed playthrough. But in the beginning, I didn't really do anything. I spent my first turn only dodging. I took a turn without even playing cards to just discard to draw cards to protect myself, and then I died anyway. Waited off the board and then came back in. So
No. Sorry. Let's just replay that for a second.
They're gonna watch
The
it.
correct sequence was Meg saying, "This is a defensive card. I don't
need
do
it."
defensive. Discard. Next turn. Monster hits
Informed
everyone."
decision.
Meg's like, if I had that
Sure.
card, I'd be alive. But
There were decisions that are part of it, sure. But I spent a lot of the first few turns feeling like I didn't really participate or do anything. And at first I was like, I don't know, is this kind of like too many people and too much? And then immediately after that, I came back with combos that were extremely powerful. This is spoiler. But I feel like even
give
through
a
the
spoiler
course
warning.
of the
Spoiler,
game, how well this played and how well my deck worked together, it started off slow and then built so satisfying that it turned around my mood of the game immediately. So I think that for how the cards work together and how well they work for what class you are, it completely changed the game for me in such a great way that I loved it by the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for me, I like the combination of cards. I mean, the one thing I would have needed would have been like if we had played with someone who had like developed the game and they had mentioned the idea of like a stamina potion
Perkins!
to where I could have like cleared my board and done that really cool combo that I was gonna do. Like if that had happened, we would just have needed an informed fourth individual that. But other than that,
that wanted you to win or lose?
I'm uncertain at this point.
Yeah.
I'm uncertain at this point. I would have to talk to that person later. This hypothetical person.
Yeah, exactly.
I would have to have that conversation at another time.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But just to save my point, I had a few bad turns, and the game turned it around for me, which I think was very strong and really made me appreciate
Well
it.
said.
Yeah, yeah. And that's gonna be it. That's gonna be our first impressions of Monster Hunter World Iceborne. This is not a full review. This is just diving into the game, getting a few plays under the belt, talking about our experiences from a few different mindsets, stances, yeah, all that. Past that, if you want more content, you can check out the original Monster Hunter World. You can check out my original Monster Hunter World review, the playthrough over on Steam Forge Games, the original Monster Hunter World playthroughs over on my channel, or a dozen other channels. Past that, make sure to keep your eyes peeled for the Kickstarter. I'll have a link down below, May 18th over on Kickstarter. This is Monster Hunter World Iceborne. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Meg.
Perkins!
And huge thank you to Steam Forge Games for letting us play this early and hang out here and touch the minis.
Absolutely.
Much appreciated. See you guys next time.
See ya.